Well, here we are. We're living in a world where Khamzat Chimaev violated Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker had things done to him that he really didn't want to happen to him. Everything that happened to Robert Whittaker was completely and utterly against his will, and that's sad. That's sad, but at this point, I think it's time we move on, and I think it's time we ask the very fair question, okay, who can stop this guy? Who can stop Khamzat Chimaev? He poses some very scary proposition that I don't think anybody at 185 ever has. And look, I think there are 3 potential names that we could maybe see Khamzat Chimaev fight in the future. Of course, we're all expecting him to get a title shot, but the question is he going to leapfrog Sean Strickland, or is he going to be waiting for his fight with DDP so he can take on the winner? Well, I mean, if that's the case, Khamzat took 0 damage against Whittaker. I mean, he is as fresh as a daisy. He's ready to go, and he may take a potential fight while he's waiting. And the only contender at 185 that makes any sense is Israel Adesanya. I mean, let's just be honest here. I would love to see him fight Israel Adesanya. I would absolutely love it, because for the simple fact that Adesanya would get absolutely dog-walked by Khamzat, pun intended. I think Israel Adesanya would get brutalized by him, and I really, really want to see it happen. And it's not because I have anything against Adesanya. I have absolutely nothing against the guy. I just, frankly, really, really hate him. I think in terms of being unlikable, I think Adesanya is up there as one of the absolute worst. I mean, he's pretty horrendous. And look, does he stand any chance against Khamzat? I mean, look, I think this is where it all comes down to. Israel Adesanya, of course, is going to be far better on the feet than Khamzat. You know, I've said this many, many times, but Khamzat offensively is very dangerous with his striking. He switches stances very fluidly. He has one-punch knockout power even at 185 pounds. But defensively, I don't think he's great. I think he's pretty hittable. I don't think his striking defense is really all that. But it's pretty irrelevant if Israel Adesanya can't stop the takedown. And if he does get taken down, I mean, can he survive? Look, Adesanya historically at 185 has had really good takedown defense. But what it stems from is the fact that he manages distance so well. The only way you're going to take Adesanya down is if you get deep on a shot that he just didn't see coming. You have to beat him to his hips. But the problem is, because he's standing so far away from you, lead hand completely extended outward, and he's constantly feinting, doing his little hip twitches. You don't know what he's going to throw, and frankly, a lot of guys end up taking bad shots that he just sees from a mile away. So he grabs an underhook, hikes it up, and now the takedown is stuffed really, really early. But you look at how Khamzat Chimaev shoots. For one, it is the fastest double leg I have ever seen in the sport. Khamzat's athleticism when it comes to wrestling is fucking insane. Because Robert Whittaker got an underhook. I mean, he has an underhook here, but it just didn't matter. Khamzat shot so hard, so fast, and so low that there was no defending this with an underhook. The only way you're going to defend this is if you sprawl hard, but the problem is you can't sprawl up against the fence. So Adesanya needs to find a way to keep this fight out in the open. That's the only way. And yeah, I would tell you that's not very likely. That is not very likely to happen. If Khamzat Chimaev moves forward with strikes against Adesanya, he would need to find a way to hold his ground and make Khamzat respect his striking enough that he can't just walk him backwards. Now, if you were to ask Daniel Cormier, he would tell you that Israel Adesanya is a tremendous counter-striker who is a master of finding shots in the chaos. That's what he would tell you. I would tell you that's horse shit. And I would tell you that if you move forward with strikes against Adesanya, the only thing he's going to do is try to back away, back to range. And that's kind of the big issue here. If Khamzat Chimaev extends forward with a strike, Adesanya is going to try to back away. And that's where the shot opens up. That is where the takedowns opened up for Dricus. And the difference between Dricus and Khamzat is Khamzat's takedowns are so much faster. I mean, again, you look at the Robert Whittaker fight and you see Khamzat moves forward. He feints an uppercut. Whittaker reacts very slightly, but that slight reaction is just enough paired with Khamzat's speed and athleticism with the takedown, it just allows him to get so deep on these shots. And I just don't think Adesanya really stands a chance here to prevent the initial takedown. Look, if he had a striking game akin to, an Ilia Topuria, a Conor McGregor, a Sean O'Malley even, yeah, you would say it's very dangerous to extend against guys like this. Guys who are extremely accurate, extremely powerful with good movement, good speed, but that's just not Adesanya's game, all right? Every guy who has ever fought Adesanya lumbers at him with punches. He just tries to slide away. And if you slide away against Khamzat, the takedown's going to open up like that. And Israel Adesanya is going to get taken down. Now, the question is, can he survive there? Well, if you look back historically at all of Adesanya's fights, he does have a tendency to turtle and give up his back. If you get taken down and you're flat on your back, the only way you're going to get back up is if you turn to your knees and try to stand back up. That's the only way. But the problem is, Khamzat Chimaev is a very, very well-rounded grappler. He is just waiting to take your back. He's waiting to get higher than you, to pin you. It's absolutely miserable to stand up against him, and he's just going to try to submit you. And again, you look at the Dricus Du Plessis fight, Adesanya was pretty reckless giving up his back there. He gave up his back to Marvin Vettori, again, pretty recklessly trying to stand back up, just because he tried to force it without getting the underhook, and you're going to give up your back every single time doing that. Again, look, if I'm Adesanya and I'm taken down, you are not going to beat Khamzat Chimaev in the wrestling scrambles. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Even if you do beat him briefly, like Robert Whittaker did, he's just going to shoot again. And look, if I'm Adesanya, I am just going to try to stay on my back, grab full guard, and hang on for dear life. But then we run into a new problem. Okay, are you going to fatigue Khamzat that way? I mean, are you? Look, against Kevin Holland, against Kamaru Usman, that initial pace Khamzat put on both of those guys was absolutely frantic. It was completely and utterly frantic. It was a full-blown sprint. But against Robert Whittaker, it wasn't. Honestly, Khamzat was making Whittaker work harder than he was. That is just what happened. So, man, I think in order to survive, Israel Adesanya just needs to stay on his back and not give Khamzat anything to work with. But again, the problem you now have to deal with is the fact that you're not going to fatigue Khamzat that way. I mean, at that point, you're just banking on him slowing down and then being unable to take you down in the later rounds. But I don't think he's going to gas out that way. I mean, I don't think that's very likely at all. And, again, when you go back and you look at the Marvin Vettori fight as a great example, Israel Adesanya did not do an amazing job defending takedowns there. I mean, he just didn't. I mean, Marvin was able to get deep on shots despite not setting it up necessarily super well, being way slower than Khamzat. And you may say a part of that came from the fact that he just didn't really respect Marvin, which, that I can understand. But Khamzat, in terms of the grappling, it's just a completely different ball game. I mean, Israel Adesanya has never faced somebody who puts it all together on the ground as good as Khamzat. And again, look, if Israel Adesanya just needed to connect one time to knock Khamzat out, I would say, okay, maybe he has a shot here if he just tries to survive on the ground. But that's just not likely. Israel Adesanya's game is to leg kick and jab you from far away. And I don't think that style translates well at all against somebody like Khamzat Chimaev. And I think, look, in terms of, can Israel Adesanya beat Khamzat? I give him a 99% chance of losing every single time definitively. He will never, ever win. But now, Sean Strickland, this is a slightly more interesting case. I think one thing that Strickland has that Adesanya doesn't is get-ups from the bottom. Sean Strickland's get-ups from the bottom are tremendously better than Adesanya's. Now, though, I will say Strickland's pure takedown defense out in the open isn't quite as good as Adesanya's. I think because of how tall Strickland stands, he is very susceptible to the double legs. I mean, we saw this in the Dricus fight. Again, the only way you are stopping Khamzat's shot is to sprawl hard. Well, if we look at the DDP fight, Strickland never sprawled like that. I mean, it just didn't happen. He's standing so tall. His legs are so close together. He's very susceptible to the double leg. I think he's going to have a really difficult time stopping Khamzat's shot. But with that being said, when he would get taken down, he would do an amazing job preventing the back take. He would just always keep his back up against the fence really well, completely eliminating eliminating any possibility of sliding the hook around, which, look, against somebody like Khamzat, that is going to really come into play. Now, again, though, here's the big issue with Strickland. Every single mat return DDP attempted against Sean Strickland, he was able to hit. Strickland did an amazing job, like I said, keeping his back to the fence, standing back up. But whenever DDP tried, he was able to hit the mat return. At one point, even suplex Strickland. But when Strickland would get up again the second time, DDP would just let it go. He would just let it go and go back to space. Whereas he did not do that against Adesanya. Every time Izzy got back up, DDP held on to him for dear life. He did not want to let go and go back to space because I imagine he felt like Adesanya was a little more dangerous than Strickland out in the open, given Strickland's just going to jab and teep his way to a decision. So look, it's kind of tough to say. I think Strickland's get-ups from the bottom are going to be really, really good against Khamzat, but can he prevent the reshots? Can he prevent the mat returns? I mean, I don't know, but based on the Whittaker fight, I don't think Strickland's going to get choked. I just don't think so. Again, Whittaker shouldn't have gotten finished by this. I mean, he just shouldn't have. The way Khamzat was on his back, there was nothing stopping Whittaker from turning into him. Problem is, though, Whittaker's teeth, of course, immediately got dislodged as soon as Khamzat slapped that choke on. And, you look at the Abus-Magomedov fight. Abus was able to take Strickland's back, and he was able to do it because as Strickland was trying to get back up, Abus threatened the choke, which did briefly get Strickland's back off the fence just enough to slide his other hook in, but Strickland again did an amazing job scrambling back to his feet immediately after that. I just think Strickland's pure fundamentals on the ground is a bit better than Adesanya's. He did a way better job preventing DDP from taking his back. I think his submission defense is a little bit better, and I think he has a higher likelihood of fatiguing Khamzat via just surviving, to be honest with you. Now, here's the thing, though. Khamzat's top pressure, it's better than DDP's. I mean, it just is. DDP wouldn't get his head higher than yours when he had Strickland or Adesanya down. Whereas you look at Khamzat here, the top pressure is better. I mean, he is making Whittaker carry his weight, and it's just a lot more difficult to stand up against. And of course, you have to factor in, Sean Strickland will have to win a decision. I mean, he's not going to finish Khamzat. There's just no way. So can he prevent any takedowns after round two? That's the big question. And again, right, Khamzat against Robert Whittaker wasn't sprinting. He was honestly making Whittaker work harder than he was. And again, I would give Sean Strickland a slightly higher chance of surviving on the ground, potentially fatiguing Khamzat more than Adesanya would, preventing the back takes, doing a better job at preventing the submission attempts. But again, it's the fact that he has to win this fight by decision that, to me, really makes this fight honestly not that close. I just don't think so. Especially when you factor in the point that every single shot DDP hit on Strickland, there was no sprawl. I mean, every single time he was standing very tall and he was able to complete the takedown fairly easily. Again, I give him a slightly better chance than Adesanya, but I don't think this is a close fight. Now, though, with all of this being said, I'll tell you what is a close fight. Dricus Du Plessis. I think Dricus Du Plessis, if anybody can match Khamzat Chimaev in terms of the physicality, who has the ability to finish him, who legitimately is very skilled on the ground, I think it's going to be him. I think the best attribute Dricus has in a potential matchup with Khamzat is his physicality. I mean, without a doubt. You look at the Robert Whittaker fight, though, there was a moment where Whittaker stood back up against Khamzat, grabbed a whizzer, and Khamzat lifted him in the air, shuck to his back, and just kind of smashed him. Well, look, Dricus Du Plessis is one of the few guys that I think, in terms of just straight up girthiness, manliness, power, size, strength, he can contend with Khamzat in this area. I mean, Dricus Du Plessis, say what you will about the guy, he is a large, large man. And the other thing that I really like about Dricus is his game planning. I mean, he game plans extremely well based on his opponent. You go back to the Sean Strickland fight, and he made it very known in the lead up to that fight that I cannot get backed up. I need to put Sean Strickland on the back foot. I need to walk him down. I need to pressure him. And he stood right in front of him. He ate so many jabs. I mean, Dricus's face was mush after that fight, but it did not deter him. He stuck to the game plan and he backed Strickland up. Well, like I've been saying this whole video, that's what you need to do against Khamzat. You have to back him up. And Dricus is extremely durable. He himself has a ton of power. And again, you cannot defend Khamzat's double legs without sprawling. You have to. And therefore, you cannot get backed up to the fence. And I think if anybody is going to hold the center against Khamzat, it is absolutely going to be Dricus. But look, with how fast Khamzat's shots are, it's possible that even if you are out in the open, you don't time the sprawl right, and you get taken down. Well, look, when you look at Dricus' fight with Robert Whittaker, Whittaker timed a really good takedown on Dricus right in the middle of his combination. He made Dricus run into it. As soon as they hit the ground, for one, Dricus got him in a tight guillotine. He hip escaped out real quick, got a hold of his neck. Now, Whittaker defended beautifully, jumped over the top, the side control, but the way Dricus got back up was perfect. He grabbed an underhook and was able to use it to stand back up. That underhook right here completely eliminates the back take. That is what you absolutely need to stand back up. But look, against a really strong wrestler, it's going to be hard to hike up that underhook, get to your knees, stand back up. But again, Dricus, with his physicality, he's one of the few guys really capable of it. Now, look, it is dangerous because you're kind of giving your opponent an opportunity to darce by grabbing that underhook. But again, as long as you keep it strong and tight around the body, it's going to be really difficult to finish the darce, especially when you don't have the strength advantage over your opponent. I think this sequence right here, to me, makes me a lot more confident in Dricus' ability to contend with Khamzat on the ground. I'm telling you, that underhook, it's a fucking game changer when it comes to standing back up. The best example of this by far is when Leon Edwards fought Colby Covington. Leon tries to step over and take Colby's back, but this was just a huge mistake because no matter what Leon Edwards did, it didn't matter. There is no physical way he could have taken Colby's back because Colby had the underhook. There's just no way. And if Dricus grabs the underhook just like this on Khamzat, Khamzat cannot take his back. It just will not happen from that sequence. So I think there's a very, very high likelihood that we're going to see prolonged periods of DDP and Khamzat striking on the feet. And look, this is where it starts getting real scary for Khamzat because, again, defensively, Khamzat's not great. I mean, he ate a lot of jabs, a lot of straight right hands from Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman. The head movement's not quite there, and I think, honestly, Dricus hits a lot harder than either of them two, and he does have real kickboxing accolades. Look, a lot of people are going to look at Dricus just spamming the blitz at Sean Strickland and Adesanya and say, well, on the feet, he's kind of one-dimensional. Look, though, he fought Robert Whittaker on the feet very, very different than them two. And that's because with Strickland and Adesanya, Dricus knew there was very, very little probability of them making him pay for the misses. He knew that neither of those guys are good at finding counters. Whereas when he fought Whittaker, he fought completely different. His entire game plan against Whittaker was time either a jab or a straight right hand off of Whittaker's blitz. And honestly, I would assume that Dricus would refrain from blitzing at Khamzat because that opens up the possibility of running into double legs. I think he would fight against Khamzat completely different than he fought against Strickland and Adesanya because he fought Whittaker completely different than them two. Honestly, man, I'm leaning towards Dricus to win this fight. I really am. But there are still a lot of unanswered questions about Khamzat. I mean, the Whittaker fight showed us that he still had a massive strength advantage at 185, that his wrestling, his athleticism in that area is completely unmatched. However, is his cardio really significantly better? I don't know. Has he made improvements on the feet? I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say. It's difficult to speak definitively. But honestly, I think this makes, the storyline of Khamzat getting a title shot or fighting any of these three guys more interesting. But, based on what we know, I think Dricus can match the physicality. I think we've seen him have really good get-ups from on the ground. I think he's very technical on the ground. And I think he's going to have a huge advantage on the feet. But Again, I don't know. It's difficult to speak definitively, but, I mean, yeah, there you go, right?